A hush fell over the crowd. Cobblestones echoed with footsteps, chatter died mid-sentence, and even the pigeons seemed to pause. The woman, wearing designer heels and a smirk carved more from entitlement than amusement, stepped forward. In her manicured hand, a half-empty coffee cup trembled, not from nerves, but from anticipation. The royal guard stood motionless. Regal. Unflinching. A living statue draped in history. Then, with a flick of her wrist, the coffee flew. A tan arc of steaming liquid cut through the summer air, striking his crimson tunic with a wet slap. A collective gasp rippled through the courtyard. Phones lowered. Children clutched their parents. A moment that began with mockery now hung in sacred stillness. She expected outrage. Retaliation. What she got instead stunned even the police. The incident unfolded outside St. James's Palace, just past noon, one of those golden afternoons where history and ceremony blur into spectacle. The changing of the guard had drawn its usual crowd, wide-eyed tourists, reverent locals, children on school trips, all gathered to witness the solemn pageantry that London does like no other. In the middle of the crowd stood Isla Munro, unmistakable in her oversized sunglasses and curated confidence. A social media powerhouse with over 3 million followers, Isla wasn't there to admire tradition. She was there to capture it, twist it, and Monetize it. Culture wasn't something to honor, it was something to harvest for likes. Her assistant, a quiet young man with a backpack full of gear, trailed behind, trying to keep up as Isla narrated her every step into her phone. "Okay guys, here's one of those guards who literally doesn't move, like, ever," she said, panning her camera to the motionless figure in scarlet. That figure was Warrant Officer Thomas Avery. 43. Stoic. Highly decorated. A man who had once led patrols through enemy territory and now stood guard over tradition itself. This ceremonial post was no demotion, it was a tribute. An honor hard-earned and deeply respected. Avery had seen mockery before. Children testing boundaries. Tourists pressing too close. But rarely this level of intentional provocation. Isla stood just inches from his face, waving her manicured hand like she was trying to swat a fly. "Are you real?" she teased to her live stream, giggling. The laughter around her was uneasy. Some smiled nervously. Others turned away. A child nearby looked up, confused. "Mum, why is she being mean to the soldier?" Isla wasn't listening. She was building a moment. A peek. One final push for engagement. She turned to her assistant and rolled her eyes. "Let's see if he's still made of stone with this." With that, she lifted her half-drunk oat milk latte, foam still swirling at the top. The crowd tensed. The guard remained still. And Isla, convinced the moment was hers, raised her arm. The coffee arced through the air, a slow-motion betrayal of decency. It struck dead center on the royal guard's chest. A thick, steaming splash of oat milk and espresso that splotched across the crimson tunic like a wound. A sharp gasp tore through the crowd. Someone let out a short, startled shriek. Others instinctively stepped back. Isla's assistant froze, his hand still gripping the gimbal, mouth parted in disbelief. The device was still streaming, still rolling, but no one watching was laughing now. At first, Isla grinned. It was the grin of someone certain she had nailed the moment. The viral spark. She turned, waiting for amused applause. But there was none. The air had shifted. The laughter she expected curdled into stunned silence. Eyes widened, not in delight, but in shock. Judgment. Disgust. Her smile faltered. "It was just a joke," she muttered, but the words died in the dry hush that followed. Her voice, once animated for the stream, now shrank beneath the gravity of her own doing. And still, the guard did not move. Warrant Officer Avery stood as he had stood through storms, protests, and royal funerals, silent, statuesque, immovable. The coffee soaked into his uniform, steaming gently in the afternoon sun, but his grip on his rifle remained unchanged. His eyes, invisible beneath the shadow of his bearskin cap, stared straight ahead. His jaw was carved from restraint. A breeze drifted through the courtyard, carrying with it the scent of burnt coffee and something else, shame. A tourist near the front muttered, "Unbelievable." Another, older, more wounded by what he'd witnessed, Whispered, "That's assault." Phones came up, but not to gawk. To record. For evidence. For justice. No one smiled. A retired teacher in a houndstooth coat shook his head, his voice quiet but clear. "This is why we're losing reverence," he said. "It starts small. Then it's gone." Nearby, the same little boy from earlier tugged at his mother's hand. "Mum, can I say sorry to the soldier?" His mother knelt, wrapping her arms around him protectively. Her eyes stayed fixed on the guard, as if she, too, was waiting for him to break the spell. But he didn't. And Isla, once so certain, so smug, began to shrink in real time. Her posture collapsed in on itself. She looked around for allies and found none. Not in the tourists. Not in the phones. Not in the eyes watching from windows above. She turned toward a nearby officer in a neon vest and raised her hands half-heartedly. It was just for content. He's not even supposed to react, right? But the officer didn't answer her. His gaze was fixed on the guard. The guard finally moved. Not with anger. Not with force. But with a slow, deliberate grace that made the air itself seem to hold its breath. Warrant Officer Avery raised one gloved hand to his chest, not to brush away the stain, not to reject what had been done, but to acknowledge it. With measured precision, he reached into the inner lining of his ceremonial coat and drew out a white handkerchief. It was crisp. Folded neatly. The kind passed down by men who understood that presentation was not vanity, but respect. He unfolded it carefully and dabbed at the soiled fabric, not scrubbing, not erasing, just honoring the weight of the moment. And then, against all expectation, he turned. Not toward Isla. Not toward the crowd. He turned slightly, just enough, to face the small boy who had watched everything with wide, questioning eyes. And with the faintest, most reverent nod, he extended the handkerchief outward. Not offering it, but showing it. As if to say, there is another way to respond to disrespect. With discipline. With grace. With self-command. He didn't raise his voice. But then, he spoke. His words carried with the kind of clarity that cuts through chaos. Respect is not owed because of a uniform. But it is reflected by how we treat those who wear one. The silence deepened. Not from awkwardness, but from awe. The boy's mother placed a hand over her heart. Her son gripped her other hand, his gaze locked on the guard. A teenager nearby slowly lowered her phone, tears beginning to pool beneath her lashes. She wasn't just watching history. She was learning from it. It wasn't a reprimand. It was a reminder. A reminder of the quiet strength that holds nations together. Of the invisible codes that guard not just palaces, but principles. Isla stood still, her face drained of color. Whatever script she had prepared in her mind had vanished. She opened her mouth to say something, an apology, a defense, a plea, but no sound came. There was nothing left to say. The guard turned back to his post. His stance resumed. Unshaken. Undiminished. As if the moment had simply been another duty quietly fulfilled. And in that silence, in that unwavering poise, he became more than a soldier. He became a mirror, reflecting not just honor, but the choices each of us must make when dignity is tested. The video exploded online within hours. First on TikTok, then everywhere. Clipped from a tourist's phone, the moment was raw and unedited, a woman flinging coffee at a royal guard, and the guard responding with quiet, measured grace. The titles varied, but the tone did not. Influencer throws coffee at royal guard, his response silences crowd. The classiest clapback ever filmed. This is what honor looks like. It swept across social platforms like wildfire. Twitter lit up with praise and reflection. This man just redefined power without raising a hand. Every school should show this. She tried to humiliate him, and only exposed herself. The tweet with the most traction came from a British Army veteran. Served 12 years. I've never seen discipline spoken louder than in this man's silence. Respect. Reddit threads dissected every angle, frame by frame. Subreddits like r public freakout and r made me smile turned into platforms of admiration. Teachers posted their own reflections. One shared, "Using this clip in my 8th grade civics class tomorrow. Not to talk about disrespect, but to talk about restraint. Veterans chimed in from around the globe, some who had served with ceremonial units, others who had never worn a bearskin hat but recognized integrity when they saw it. A former royal staffer posted anonymously on a forum. That guard carried himself in a way that would have made the Queen herself nod. Then came the quiet royal endorsement. A retweet from the Duke's Foundation. Composure is the crown not worn on the head, but carried in the heart. TikTok users, especially younger ones, created duets and tributes. Some reenacted the scene, replacing coffee with kindness. Others simply watched in silence, hand on heart, a new kind of reverence blooming in real time. In York, a family-owned cafe renamed their oat latte Avery's honor. Every cup sold funneled proceeds to veterans' mental health charities. In the classroom, something deeper stirred. Schools in both the UK and US began adding the clip to digital behavior and character-building units. One teacher summed it up best in her lesson plan notes. It's not just about what she did. It's about what he didn't do. Meanwhile, Isla Munro's digital empire began to fracture. Within 24 hours, her follower count plummeted by over 200,000. Sponsorship deals quietly dissolved. A scheduled livestream was cancelled without explanation. The comment sections weren't full of rage or cruelty. Just one message, echoed again and again like a moral verdict. He stood taller than your ego ever could. Isla posted her apology video less than 48 hours after the incident. It was filmed in a dim hotel room, the background unkempt, her voice trembling. Tears stained her mascara as she spoke. I didn't mean harm. I thought it would be funny. I didn't think. But the internet had already moved past the need for explanations. Comments flooded in, not cruel, just cold. You didn't think. That's the problem. Too little, too late. Dignity isn't content. He kept his honor. You lost yours. Within hours, her sponsors began issuing their own statements. A luxury skincare brand severed ties first, citing a misalignment of values. Then a pending collaboration with a major fashion label, rumored to be worth 6 figures, was quietly cancelled. Her management company released a terse statement of disassociation. Even her assistant, the one who had stood silently behind the camera, announced her resignation through a now viral tweet. Some moments change everything. This was mine. The Metropolitan Police launched a formal investigation after public pressure reached a boiling point. Lawyers debated whether the act constituted assault. In the end, it was ruled as public nuisance and minor assault under British law. The judge, in his sentencing remarks, didn't raise his voice. He simply said, "What you threw was not just coffee. It was contempt, for tradition, for service, for others." Isla was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service, to be carried out over 3 months. Her assignment, cleaning and maintaining veterans' memorials in Hyde Park and surrounding areas. No cameras. No audience. Just silence, scrubbing brass plaques under grey skies. One day, during a shift near the RAF Bomber Command Memorial, an elderly man paused his walk, looked her in the eye, and asked, "Humbled yet?" She didn't reply. There was no live stream. Only her reflection in the polished stone. Meanwhile, Warrant Officer Thomas Avery continued his duties. Unchanged in posture, unchanged in principle. The Household Division held a quiet, closed-door ceremony in his honor. He was awarded a commendation for exemplary conduct under public duress. No cameras were allowed. No reporters. Just fellow guardsmen, a few officers, and a quiet sense of respect. When asked if he would like to give a statement, he offered only this: "I am not the story. I just did what I was trained to do." But outside those stone walls, across the country and beyond, he had become much more. Not a story. A standard. Weeks later, the courtyard outside St. James's Palace looked the same, but something had shifted. Tourists still gathered. Phones still came out. But now, they paused a little longer. Children hushed their voices. Some even stood at attention. There was no announcement, no ceremony, just a small plaque, quietly installed near the edge of the walkway. It wasn't in memory of the incident, but of the value it uncovered. It read, Respect is not weakness. It is strength, mastered. Warrant Officer Thomas Avery continued his post without change. Same scarlet tunic. Same gleaming boots. Same unbreakable stillness. But the nods he now received weren't born of curiosity. They carried reverence, recognition, gratitude. And Isla? After her service hours ended, long days spent polishing names of men she had once mocked in silence, her online presence went dark. Her channel, once a stream of curated luxury and performative energy, was deleted. No farewell video. No monetized exit. Months passed. Then, on a quiet afternoon, a new account surfaced. No hashtags. No filters. Just a single photo. A folded flag resting atop an old wooden table. The caption read, "Learning the hard way. Earning the lesson every day." No one was tagged. No comments allowed. But those who saw it, truly saw it, knew. The video she once tried to profit from had become something she could never control. A national mirror. It reflected not just her shame, but our choices. How we treat those who serve. How we honor dignity. And how, sometimes, restraint says more than rage ever could. Thomas Avery never gave a speech. He never scolded. He simply stood. And by doing so, he reminded millions. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Have you ever seen someone teach the world just by standing still?